Hello everyone, this is Dr. Pooja Sharma, Associate Professor in Department of MBA. Today I will discuss about the risk management method. In previous lecture, I have just told you about the risk management, what is the concept of the risk management, what is the difference between the risk and uncertainty, how a risk manager can manage the risk, can follow the process of managing the risk, can collect the data about the risk exposure. So now I will discuss today about the techniques, risk management methods. Risk is what? It's a risk management is a process that identifies losses exposure faced by an organization and select the most appropriate technique for treating such exposure. A loss exposure in any situation or circumstance in which a loss is possible regardless of whether a loss occurs or not. Example of that plant may be damaged by an earthquake. So for treating this kind of losses, a businessman or a risk manager can get the insurance. So this is one of the technique. Risk management methods. Once risks have been identified and assessed, all the techniques to manage the risk fall into one or more of these four major categories. First is risk avoidance, second, risk reduction, third, risk sharing, fourth, risk retention. If I'll talk about the risk avoidance, means eliminating, withdrawn from, or not become involved. Risk avoidance means this this include basically this includes not performing such an activity that could present risk. Refusing to purchase a property or a business to avoid legal liability is one of such example. Example of that is, suppose a person has to think about it to start the business, but because of avoidance of the risk, because he doesn't want to take the risk, he doesn't want he wants to avoid the risk, he will not enter in that particular business, and in this way he will lose the possible losses which he can earn with that very business. So in avoidance, basically a person will not enter in that particular activity, refuse the activity, refuse the that particular, like purchasing a property or a business which is having the risk. So this is known as risk avoidance. This is not good, because pay higher the risk, higher the return. A business, always all the activities, all the investment involve risk of one type or another. People have many motives for investing such securities or assets, but there will be involvement of the risk. If they're not involved in these kind of activities, they cannot have the possible profits. Second method, risk reduction. Risk reduction involves reducing the amount of the loss. Means basically this method of risk management attempts to minimize the loss rather than completely eliminating that. Means here the person will not avoid the risk, he will just minimize, he will try to minimize the risk, amount of the risk, or the amount of the loss. While accepting the risk, it stays focused on keeping the loss contained and preventing it from spreading. An example of this in health insurance is preventive care. Third, risk sharing. If I'll talk about the risk sharing, here we can take the example of insurance. Insurance is best example of this. Here, the term of the risk transfer is often used in place of risk sharing in the mistaken belief that you can transfer a risk to a third party through insurance or outsourcing. Sharing risk is often implemented through employer based benefits that allow the company to pay a portion of insurance premiums with the employees. Means here the employee will also pay the premium for getting the insurance for their employees. Risk retention. Risk retention involves accepting the loss or benefit of gains from a risk when the incident occurs. True self insurance falls in this category, means a person will not take any kind of insurance, a person will try to get this self insurance, try to minimize the risk themselves. All the risks that are not avoided or transferred are retained by the default by the person, that is known as risk retention. Here, the person will try to minimize the loss, minimize the risk by their own efforts. They'll just take their self insurance. These are the some methods which I have discussed about the risk. These are the some techniques through which a risk can be managed. If I'll talk about the measurement of risk, the risk can be measured by range analysis, by probability distribution, standard deviation. These are and coefficient of variation. These are some statistical techniques with the help of that risk can be measured. Thank you so much. That's all for today.